Okay, if we're quiet and we don't make noise, the lickers can't notice us. Sheva, why did you make noise? We needed to be quiet. Dang, Sheva! Oh no!
Don't do it!
He's taking the goof juice! Resident Evil 5. Out of all of the numbered Resident Evil games, I find that this one is the most misunderstood one. See, Resident Evil 5 came out after Resident Evil 4. And if you know anything about the Resident Evil franchise, number 4 is hailed as one of the best games, not just in the series, but of all time. Now, I love Resident Evil 4. And I also love Resident Evil 5. This game is really, really fun, and I think it's fantastic. However, I see a lot of discourse online saying that Resident Evil 5 is a lesser game, or it's just not as good as 4. Which is a darn shame, because I think a lot of these people probably have just never played it before. Which makes me want to play it again and show it off to people. So I thought, let's take a look at Resident Evil 5. We open on Chris Redfield, driving through Africa. He stops at an African town where he meets his new partner, Sheva Olimar. Chris's mission is to stop an illegal bioweapon sale. We get to walk around for a bit, look at the state of the local town, get a first gun, talk to Sheva, get a deal for what's going on with her, and more importantly, we get details about what's going on the level of bioweapons and stuff like that in the state of the world. Eventually, we do get to find out what kind of bioweapons are being used here. We watch as a guy is forced to eat a mass of worms and tissue. This mix of nastiness turns this guy into a zombie in seconds. If you're wondering, this effect is also achieved by not watching a YouTube video while you eat. We put him out of his misery and continue forth, only to be pinned into a corner by hordes of civilian-turned zombies. This leads us into the first of many survival segments. All we have to do is survive for long enough until the helicopter comes and saves us. And for a survival segment this early on, it's super tense. Something that I want to point out is that RE5 is definitely focused on action a lot more than any of the other titles that came before it. Now, mind you, this isn't a bad thing. But if you're someone looking for more of a horror-themed RE game, you're going to have to look somewhere else. A lot of the tension that RE5 has comes from combat and item management, rather than tension and fear from trying to solve puzzles while also running from monsters and zombies. After some more exploration and we get our first boss fight, Cursed Spaghetti. This whole boss fight is all about trying to lead this abomination of Italian food into the furnace so that way we can burn it into a crisp. For a boss fight, it's okay. I wish it went on for longer and had more mechanics to it to make the fight interesting, but I can see that this fight is clearly intended to be short and brief. RE5 is definitely built on the same foundations of RE4. It has the same engine, same sound effects, action-focused gameplay, the aim system is the same, and most importantly, there's a partner character by your side at all times. Because of that, some people will assume that RE5 is just trying to recreate RE4, but this time without Leon or his one-liners, and without the dynamic of action. which is just Ashley yelling for Leon every 5 seconds. Gameplay-wise, it's very similar. You aim, shoot, and use the knife all the same way as RE4. Even the red dot laser sight returns as well. And in all honesty, that works in its favor. If you like how RE4 plays, this will still feel very solid to you. The biggest change is in the partner system. Back in RE4, Ashley could be frustrating to deal with. So when Capcom decided to give Chris a new partner, they clearly wanted to fix that. Sheva feels like an actual teammate. She can fight, hold her own. From what I've seen in the gameplay and what I experienced, she doesn't constantly get in your way. Yes, at times her AI can be dumb and not very useful, but I find that she isn't nearly as bad as some people have said. The main benefit to having Sheva around is that this game has full co-op available. One person can play as Chris and the other person plays as Sheva. And I gotta say that this system is one of the game's biggest strengths. It's not super scary or horror related, but it's a really good time to have a buddy with you to play alongside you. Chapter 2 gives us an over-the-top cutscene with motorcycle zombies and more BSAA troops coming in to save the day. After we get this obligatory badass cutscene, we're given a lead on the target suspect of the bioweapons deal. His name is Irving, and he's a pompous asshole who needs to be taken down. But more important than that, we get an image of Chris's old partner, Jill Valentine, who went missing some time ago, which shocks Chris. The most important part of this chapter is that we get to explore a really dark mine that's infested with zombies and monsters, and oh my god, is that treasure! Hold on, Sheva! These gemstones are really valuable. I know we're on a mission, but I gotta get this bag to impress Leon the next time we meet for brunch. We eventually find Irving at the end of the mine, where he escapes with the help of a masked figure. This leads into the next boss, a giant bat monster. Guys, don't put bats and scorpions in the same enclosure. They're just gonna interbreed until they create abominations like this. I don't know how Umbrella messed this up, okay? This is common knowledge. After we kill the bat, we get a fast-paced turret sequence followed by a fight against a giant similar to El Gigante from Resident Evil 4. And after such an intense gunfight with a bat, I can safely say that this turret section is actually kind of fun. It reminds me a lot of arcade games that you and your brother or your friends would play at like Chuck E. Cheese's. The end of Chapter 2 is also when the game really makes you stress about inventory management and the use of the shop. Unlike RE4, you don't have a ton of space like Leon. Chris and Sheva only have 9 slots each. This means you have to balance everything you get throughout the entire game in just 18 spaces. And this is how the game creates a lot of its tension. So you could just have 1 or 2 weapons on you and then use the rest of the spaces for herbs and ammo, or you can lug a ton of weapons around just in case you encounter a variety of enemies. Think of this system like packing for a weekend trip. Except for that weekend trip is into hell. Then there's the shop, which appears after dying or finishing a chapter. It's handy if you just got wiped out and you can stock up before trying again. But if you're broke or have nothing to sell, it's more of a mild speed bump in getting back into the action. The inventory of the shop changes based on what you have collected in the main game. Let's say you find the Magnum and give it to Chris. The shop will then have a Magnum for sale that's the exact same as one you picked up. This is mainly so that way if one person is playing Chris and you have player 2 playing Sheva, they can both have the same weapon. There are new guns to buy as well throughout the game as you beat chapters. Many of them are supposed to be upgrades over other guns, or at least different options with different roles to play. But outside of buying a new handgun for Chris, I didn't really bother buying any of the new weapons, as I didn't think I'd need them, and throughout my gameplay I kept getting good new guns throughout the story, so I never felt pressure to buy something new from the shop, when realistically upgrading weapons is way more effective and way more of a valuable use of your limited resources. And I can see that there are some people who don't like the idea of a store existing in a horror game, especially when they insist on giving you good guns throughout the story. It can feel kind of redundant to have a shop that sells them to you. Chris begins recounting to Sheva what happened to Jill. The two of them track down Spencer, the founder of Umbrella, the people who make all the viruses that make zombies and other bioweapons. However, when they get there, they find that Albert Wesker has killed him. The three of them fight it out, and god damn, is this a good way to show off Wesker's power. He's dodging bullets, zooming along the battlefield, and overall being a badass villain. It's thanks to Jill's sacrifice jumping onto Wesker and knocking him through a window that Chris is able to survive. I love the way Capcom introduces Wesker throughout most of its games, especially in RE5 right here. For all the giant monsters, abominations, and emotional moments, Wesker still remains one of the most memorable things about this game. If you know anything about RE5, it's Wesker. The rest of Chapter 3 is dedicated to hunting down Irving. Right before we get to Irving, we have this giant oil field battle. This oil field is a really tough combat challenge, as there are zip lines and multiple different types of enemies. You have melee, range, and even a few that throw explosives. The most notable thing though is that you have to turn these little valves, and every time you turn one, a chainsaw wielding maniac comes around. He's a tough fight even if you have the magnum equipped, and he can easily one-shot Chris or Sheva if you're not paying attention. This all leads to a boat chase with all kinds of explosions and enemies. And most importantly, it leads to another good boss fight. Irving has injected himself with a highly experimental form of Las Plagas that's been experimented on countless times. This experimental Las Plagas turns him into a gigantic sea monster. Okay, I'm going to say right now, please do not inject yourself with a random needle a woman in a spooky mask gave you. Okay, you're not gonna get superpowers, you're just gonna get an STD. You have to run around the ship dodging tentacles, all while using turrets to whittle down his health. The fight against Irving is great. He is the first of the big three bosses in this game, and while it is a little easy due to the turrets being available to you, he's still super fun to take down, and I really thought it was a great boss fight. The scenery, the boat, the storm. Yeah, it's a little barren at first, but you don't really pay attention to that when it feels like you're taking down a kraken. With all this talk about bosses and arenas, I think this is a good segue to talk about the rank and file enemies you'll be taking on. They might be one of the weaker aspects of RE5. See, many of the same mechanics of the enemies in RE4 are directly translated into the enemies of RE5. And yes, RE4 is a great game with really good enemy design, but I know the patterns of these enemies, how they act. And when I see RE5's enemies act the same way, it can feel a little lazy. Especially when the missions progress and they start to feel like RE4, but with a different coat of paint. And it's not just behaviors. If you're familiar with Resident Evil 4, you know that when you shoot an enemy's head off, sometimes a giant bug monster will pop out and start attacking you. RE5 has that too, and when they do it in RE5, and that's the exact same as RE4, it does feel a little cheap. I do wish they added more to it, like let's say an enemy's arm will mutate into a giant claw randomly, or instead enemies like will burst open into something else, or something new. That's all I really want. And I can see how if somebody has played RE4 over and over and over, and then they start playing RE5, they can feel a little let down. The good news is that RE5 does have some really good level design at least. Rarely are you ever confined to a single room connected to a single hallway to fight in. Usually there's several different branching pathways with multiple different combat encounters and a good variety of things you can do to hold off the enemy. That much is really well done in this game, and if you do it by yourself or with the player 2, it's really fun and it kind of feels like old school Call of Duty zombies. Chapter 4. I changed my clothes. You guys like that? I miss my clothes. Chapter 4 takes place in an old abandoned temple. In this temple, you'll be dodging light lasers and of course more zombies and enemies on your way to activate the pathway forward. While this is a nice intense section, it's not my favorite. See, my favorite's actually these little light puzzles where you have to guide beams of light through mirrors to hit a small little spear thing on a statue. Basically, the big takeaway here is that this is fun, and I like this. That we learned that the company Tricell, funders of the BSAA, are conducting tests and operations on old umbrella viruses and other research to further mysterious means. We see the CEO of Tricell, Excella, talking to a mysterious figure and, oh my god, is that Wesker? Get out of the way, bitch! I'm trying to see Wesker, not those artificial melons. Now we know that Wesker is behind all this, we get a little bit more information about the lore of Umbrella. All their viruses come from one progenitor virus, and Tricell wants to use the progenitor virus in combinations with other items to bring forth a new world order. All of this leads to a giant fight against a spider crab bioweapon thing. In order to defeat this thing, you're going to have to shoot the giant cysts on its legs. This will cause its head to drop on the platform where, no joke, Chris runs up and shoves a grenade into its mouth. Oh sure, when Chris uses a grenade to get rid of spiders, he's cool and a badass. When I use grenades to get rid of spiders, I'm labeled mentally unstable and dangerous. After the fight against the spider, we return to our search for Jill and Excella. The best thing that we experience here is the conveyor belts. It really makes you feel like you're working at Amazon. Even a manager comes by and disciplines you if you're a millisecond too slow. After working at the Amazon distribution center, Chris and Sheva finally catch up with Excella. She explains that Ouroboros virus will infect the world and eradicate anyone who doesn't meet the exact DNA requirements the virus wants. After another fight with the cursed spaghetti monster, we then have to navigate around a rotating platform, taking out any guards that stop it from moving up. After all of this, we finally get to meet the one, the only, Wesker. It's also here that he reveals the masked figure is Jill. He is willing to settle everything here and now. This does lead into one of the biggest lines in this game.
Say the line, Bart!
7 minutes. 7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
Yeah!
He will dodge any bullets fired at him if he sees you. You'll have to resort to shooting him in the back or after stunning him. And even then, he is easily able to kill you. On top of that too, Jill will continuously fire at you if she spots you. The two ways I know to win here is to either deal enough damage to Wesker with a magnum to make him flee, or to quite literally survive for 7 minutes. Once you do either of those things, phase 2 starts. Wesker reveals that he has a device on Jill's chest that he's using to control her body against her will. In this phase, you have to hold Jill down and physically rip off the device. After freeing Jill, she thanks us and tells us we have to stop Ouroboros from being launched into the air, and stopping Wesker is the only way to do so. The final chapter in RE5 takes place on Wesker's giant ship. The opening section is pretty much a big shootout with the last of his forces. The most notable enemy here has to be this chain gun guy mini-boss. He's tough, but if you have some grenades on you, he's not the hardest thing around. It's during this section that we also get to learn a very key piece of information. In order to keep his powers, he needs consistent injections of boosters and other chemicals. This mix is very delicate though. If he gets too much of it, he can temporarily be disabled, and his ability to regenerate and move at lightning quick speeds stops. And as luck would have it, we find some on this giant ship. The main section that I found to be cool came in Excel's fight. She's betrayed by Wesker. Her and a giant pile of bodies congeal into a mass of viscera. You climb to the top of the ship to escape tentacles and any other remaining zombies. And once you get to the top, you get to have a badass rocket launcher that marks different tumors and unleashes a giant laser. This fight oozes spectacle, and when you hit this abomination, it truly feels like you're tearing into it. After this boss fight against Excel's giant mass of disgustingness, we get our last confrontation with Wesker. This is the start of a pseudo 2-part boss fight. You run around turning off lights to hide. Then, while Wesker is either trying to search for you or turn the lights back on, you can hit him with everything you got to stun him. And while stunned, you run up and try to inject him with a serum. And if that wasn't good enough, this fight has a rocket launcher that you fire at him, but Wesker will catch it, and you have a very small window where you can shoot your gun, then cause it to explode on him, guaranteeing a stun. Do either of these enough times, and you will move on to part 2. Chris and Sheva follow Wesker onto a plane, and after a cutscene with some quick time events, we crash land onto an active volcano. From the rubble, Wesker climbs on top of the container of Ouroboros and fuses his body with it. You have to continuously run from Wesker or he will insta-kill you. Now, if you know anything about this game, if you forgot all about Wesker, you don't know about Sheva, Ouroboros, anything, I guarantee that you know this one important thing. Chris punching a boulder! Once we knock the boulder down and get Sheva in the arena with us, there's only one thing left to do, and that's somehow kill Wesker. Which, unfortunately, for a final boss fight, is actually kind of easy. You have to run up and complete a quick time event where Chris and Sheva repeatedly stab his heart over and over and over again. Wesker then falls into lava as Jill shows up in a helicopter to get Chris and Sheva out of there. As they try to escape, Wesker clings onto the helicopter, somehow not being dead while sitting in active lava. This prompts both Chris and Sheva to fire rocket launchers at him, blowing him up and presumably killing him.
Your time's up, you son of a bitch.
after this little insane ending, we finally get a moment of lightness, where Chris reflects on what he was thinking about at the very beginning of the game about whether or not it's all fighting for. He decides that a world without fear is definitely worth it, and our heroes fly into the sunset after canceling the apocalypse. So, after beating the game again, is Resident Evil 5 good? Does it copy a lot of stuff from RE4? And is it just a rehash of RE4? To answer those three questions, yes, yes, and no. Look, Resident Evil 5 is an amazing game I had a good time with. I would be lying if I said I found the game irritating, annoying, and unenjoyable. It's just not true. The game is still really damn fun and it's enjoyable. Even on single player mode, when I didn't play with a buddy, I was still having a blast. As for copying stuff from RE4, yes, that is true. It does copy a lot of things. It has the same aiming system, the shops, treasures. It even uses the same AI for a lot of different enemies. However, I would be lying if I said that that was in some way, shape, or form any reason not to give this game a try. No, it is RE5 is not just a rehash of RE4. RE5 has a great setting. We don't really see Africa as a place for horror games. I also really like Sheva. I think Sheva is a really good character, and I honestly thought that she should be in more RE games going in the future. Heck, I think she'd be a great main character. Yes, I know that her AI can be a little wonky at times. However, the few times I experienced frustration from her, it was far, far less than what anyone on the internet had ever told. And lastly, we gotta talk about the inventory system. Yes, it is really, really punishing only having a total of 18 slots split evenly across 2 characters for the entire game. It is a lot to deal with, especially when there's tons of guns and tons of things. However, as somebody who likes the original Resident Evil, the original one, which has a super limited inventory system, I found that this was a great way to combine the two. Modern combat with the old inventory. It's really good at making you feel the tension between fights because you really have to carry a lot of stuff, but you don't get a lot of space. So it makes those times in which, oh, should I bring this? Should I not bring this? It makes it all the more important. And I just want to say, RE5 is a good game, and I really, really like it. It's not as good as 4, I'll give it that. It does have some problems. But all games have problems. It's just the very nature of the beast. Very few games could be as good as RE4. And I think RE5 is a fantastic gem that deserves a faithful remake. There is one thing I was wondering while playing this game. If I like RE5, a game that most people would say is at best, could I enjoy the 6th one? The Forbidden one?